Yeah. Yep.
Hey, Greg, be sure to get your microphone closer to you. Speak.
I'm gonna shut the doors back there because of the noise. I'm leaving now.
Okay. Okay, it's now 9 a.m., and so the monthly meeting of the Fairfield Glade Community Club Board of Directors will come to order. This morning's meeting is open to all members of the community club and is being recorded for viewing on the community club website. And we are also live streaming this morning's meeting for member viewing. To honor America, please join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence to remember those who are serving in uniform and defending freedom. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Pat, would you please call the roll of the board members?
Mr. Cox?
Here.
Mr. Floral?
Here.
Mrs. Galloway? Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mrs. Miller?
Here.
Mrs. Storr?
Here.
Mr. Wedgeworth?
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we have 6 board members present, therefore we do have a quorum.
Thank you, Pat. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the prior board meeting held on April 28th, 2022?
Motion to approve the April 28th minutes.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The minutes are approved, Pat, for the April 28th meeting. This morning in the audience, we have our 6th District County Commissioner, Joe Sherrill, is in the audience. The mayor is out of town. And Joe, did you have any comments that you wanted to make? Okay. Then I'll go ahead and share my comments from across the board. At the end of March, we announced that our Fairfield Glade Police Chief Mike Williams had accepted a position with the Tennessee Board of Regents as the Assistant Vice Chancellor and Chief of Police for Tennessee Colleges of Applied Technology. Thanks to everyone's hard work and contributions to the department over the past 7 years and the department's reputation and accreditations, we were able to interview 4 truly outstanding candidates to fill our Chief of Police position. This morning we are announcing that Kurt Kaminsky has accepted the community club's offer to become the next Fairfield Glade Chief of Police, effective July 3rd. Kurt has more than 25 years of law enforcement and emergency management experience and comes to Fairfield Glade from the Suffolk County Sheriff's Department in New York. In addition to his law enforcement experience, Kurt's organizational leadership skills include staff and leadership development that will help our police department to continue to grow as a professional law enforcement organization. We wish to thank Interim Chief Kate Self for her leadership during the transition period, and we congratulate her on her promotion to Deputy Chief of Police effective July 3rd. We are confident that Chief Kaminsky and Deputy Chief Self will continue to provide the leadership that has resulted in our police department being recognized as one of the premier law enforcement organizations in Tennessee, and we expect to have a formal announcement next week. Earlier this month, we announced that Jamin Lyons, our food and beverage director, will be leaving the community club on May 27th to take a new position as general manager of SSA Group at the Chattanooga Zoo. We would like to thank Jamin for his service and contributions to Fairfield Glade and wish him all the success in his new role. And we have started our search for a new food and beverage director. In response to the comments from our members looking for a variety of dining options, this winter we tried a different approach with some new dining options using both Stonehenge Grill and the Center. With the departure of our food and beverage director, we'll be focusing all our attention on operating Stonehenge Grill in a manner that delivers a level of service and quality that our members expect and deserve. As we announced last month, this year we will elect one director at large, the interval owner or timeshare representative, and the developer declarant representative to the board of directors. The Fairfield Glade Community Club is a property owners association, and each membership parcel is allocated one vote in the election process. Applications to be considered as an at-large candidate must be submitted by 12 noon on Friday, June 3rd. The interval owner timeshare representative to the board is nominated by the Timeshare Association's presidents, and the developer declarant representative to the board is nominated by the declarant. A Meet the Candidates event is scheduled for Thursday, July 28th. Electronic balloting begins on Monday, August 8th, and ends on Friday, September 2nd at 11:59 p.m. The results of the election are announced at the 2022 annual membership meeting held at 10 a.m. on Friday, September 16th. Newly elected members of the Board of Directors begin their term of office at the annual membership meeting and participate in the election of the Board of Directors officers immediately following the annual membership meeting. Officers of the Board of Directors serve for a one-year term. We are anticipating that we will have several well-qualified candidates for this year's election. As community club members, each of us has the responsibility to do our homework on each of the candidates. The candidates' applications will be posted on the community club website. Research their positions on topics you feel are important, and then make an informed decision relative to which candidate deserves your support, and more importantly, which candidate deserves your vote. Your vote is important because the future of Fairfield Glade depends on it. It is no surprise that the current rate of inflation is affecting the price of nearly everything, and the cost of construction is no exception. We have started a process of reevaluating all of our current and proposed 2022 and 2023 major capital projects to reassess their priorities in order to keep expenditures within our capital expense budget. Here are the latest updates on our major capital projects. At the Racket Center, we have started to install the landscaping and the paving of both the Racket Center parking lots with the crossover area at the north end will start depending upon the contractor availability. The Marina Dock expansion project includes the addition of 20 slips at the Dartmoor Marina and 9 additional slips at the St. George Marina. The dock installation of all 29 docks at both marinas is complete. All 29 slips have been rented, and this expansion project maximizes the slip capacity at both of the marinas. We have also assessed the initial construction bids for the next phase of the Robin Hood Park expansion project for a pavilion with restrooms, bocce courts, and the hard surface paths. Based upon the initial bids, we have engaged the architect and the winning bidder to value engineer each element of the project. We'll be reevaluating the timing of our next steps in the process and may consider deferring phases of the work until next year due to raising construction costs. We've engaged our architect to finalize the plan so that we can get the final costs from our contractor for the alternative renovations to update the Heatherhurst snack bar area. While the initial cost estimates were within our budget of $350,000, the final cost estimates are expected to exceed our project budget, requiring us to reevaluate the project's priority. Actual construction will be deferred at a minimum until the end of the 2022 golf season. The Druid Hills Advanced Planning Team continues to work on the initial planning process to determine what the next Druid Hills Clubhouse facility should provide for our growing community. The Advanced Planning Team, the Druid Hills Food and Beverage Subcommittee, and the Golf Subcommittee continue to meet regularly. Later this morning, the board will consider a purchase requisition to engage an amenities land planner to help us develop the Druid Hills Master Site Plan once we have determined what amenities will be located there. Members who would like to share additional comments regarding the Druid Hills projects can reach out to the Druid Hills Advanced Planning Team by sending their email messages to the planning team at druidhillsprojects@fairfieldglade.cc. Information concerning the Druid Hills Advanced Planning Team is also available on the Community Club website. And that is our May update from across the board. And with that, Bruce, the treasurer's report.
Thank you. Good morning. I'll refer you to the handout and remind you that the numbers in parentheses refer to the numbers on the charts that are attached, so you can match up the two. Our financial results continue to be really strong through the first 4 months of 2022. In sewer, we've got about $4.4 million of total cash compared to about $3.6 million at the end of April of last year, which is a positive variation of over $812,000. From the Property Owners Association and the amenities, we have a little over $2 million of capital cash, about $6.7 million of operating cash, for a total of $8.8 million of cash compared to $5.9 million, almost $6 million at the end of 2021, which is a positive variation of $2.8 million. For cash flow, the sewer continues in a positive direction with a year-end positive forecast variation to budget of just over $15,000, mainly driven by continued increases in tap fees from new home starts as compared to budget. We are experiencing higher grinder pump expenses, which correlates to the increased home starts as well. The POA also continues in a positive direction with a year-end positive forecast variation of 20% to budget, which equates to over $163,000. The major contributor is payroll with open positions that we have yet to be filled. In the amenities area, we have a positive year-end forecast variation to budget equal to $155,000. Golf represents the majority of that positive variation, driven by more than 2,000 rounds, more than budgeted to date. Also, the installation of the GPS units that we announced for the golf carts is not complete. That lease for this system was budgeted starting in January, so we've realized a savings by not having that lease in place for about approximately $45,000. So the POA and amenities year-end forecast variation is favorable to budget by over $318,000. Had a very positive 4 months, which positions us well as we continue into the busy season. A couple of other interesting notes to cover. In November of 2021, Fairfield Glade Community Club, we entered into an agreement with Bobby Jones Links Corporation from Atlanta, Georgia. Bobby Jones Links owns or operates over 32 either private country clubs or POA associations like ours. And we teamed up with them on their purchasing power. The fee for that agreement was $7,000. To date, we've saved over $130,000 in purchases because of that arrangement. I had mentioned to you earlier in a report that we saved a considerable amount on the 2 sets of golf carts to start with, and we've saved more on things like chemicals and other purchases. So it's been a very worthwhile agreement so far. On May 19th, we made the final payment of the loan to the center. As of that date, the Fairfield Glade Community Club is now debt-free. What we're going to do is we're going to accrue that debt service for this loan and continue to accrue the debt service for the Stonehenge loan to build capital reserves, which can be used either to defer future borrowing or used to make debt service payments in the future. I'd refer you to the item labeled debt service reserve on the balance sheet, and you can track that each month as it grows. We'll be adding somewhere just over $31,000 a month in that reserve, so we'll be building some more capital dollars. An item that's not on there that I want to inform you about is Coulter and Justice, who are our auditors this year, presented the 2021 audit results to the board yesterday. We received an unqualified audit opinion, which means we had a clean audit. They found no issues of concern. I want to recognize Amy Kincaid, Angie Clanton, and the entire finance department for the great job they've done in handling our finances and being successful having an audit with no issues. So we are going to send out an e-blast Friday with a link on the e-blast so that you can go find the audit. It will be posted out on the network, so you'll be able to see that Friday. Any questions for me? Tom?
I like your format, first of all.
Okay.
What you're doing.
microphone.
Just a quick one, and I know we're not getting the financial reports, the details, but on food and beverage, you're showing a positive forecast to year-end, about $47,000. Is that almost all deferred payroll, both what you know now plus the open position?
Not in F&B. We try very hard. Bob, you can probably speak to that better than I can, but in talking with Jamin, it's not a labor issue, it's a sales issue, is the deal. And again, that's favorable to budget.
Correct.
Just be sure, okay. All right.
Yeah, I can just respond. Like through April, our gross profit is about $39,000 favorable to budget, and then labor is about $25,000, labor and benefits, about $26,000 favorable to budget. So it's a combination of, as Bruce said, sales and also some labor savings.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Okay, Bob, the general manager's report.
Okay. Some community improvements. The directional signs along Peavine are now complete. So pleased to see that project done. Then what's left now is a new sign at the square to replace the existing sign. The new sign will have a waterfall feature and be larger. And then we're going to repurpose the existing sign, move it down to before St. George Drive, and basically make like a little mini welcome sign down there. So you'll see Fairfield Glade just before you get to St. George Drive. It'll also have some directional slats on it as well for St. George Marina, Wyndham Guest Check-In, and then also have a slat for Rotary Club Lions, as we've had in the past, where they've had their logos on a sign as you enter the community. So we'll have a PR for that later in the meeting. The asphalt road paving has begun, and so moving along quite well on that. Then the county road superintendent has told us that they're going to start doing chip and seal after June 1st. So be on the lookout for that, and we'll send out emails for any roads that may be having that done so that you can kind of avoid those and what have you. Year-to-date golf rounds through last month were about 28,600. That's 2,000 more than budget, so we're off to a good start through April. For the year, average rounds per course per day open were 97 compared to 99 in 2021. In 2021, we had about 600 fewer rounds, but we also were open 16 fewer days, so that's why I had a little more in 2021 than 2022. And then the current yard waste program, which allows you to put out one bag of leaves or yard clippings per week with your household garbage, will continue through the month of June. We'll keep looking at that each month to determine what we can do, but that's the game plan for June, same as May, and we'll have an announcement going out on that here before the end of May. That's all I have.
Okay, thanks, Bob. The resort report, Barb.
Good morning. Wyndham timeshare visitors month-to-date 1,700, year-to-date 16,000 timeshare visitors. Timeshare revenue and percent of like revenue, the center has created $7,700, which is 9%. Racket sports, $3,300, which is 4%. Dartmoor, $10,000, which is 14%. St. George is $4,500, 7%. Golf is $106,000, which is 8%, and food is $75,000, which is 20%, for a total from the timeshare visitors is $206,800, which is an average of 10%. Thank you.
Thanks, Barb. The architectural control update. Sam?
Thank you. Miscellaneous approvals year-to-date to established homes is 539 compared to 559 last year. New homes approved year-to-date is 42 compared to the same time last year, 43. And new homes completed through year-to-date is 38 compared to 25 last year. Is there any questions?
Thank you. Thanks, Sam. Okay, the next item on the agenda is we have some unfinished business that we're going to do, and so let me share with you some comments on the Veterans and First Responders Memorial. On May 2nd, we went ahead and distributed both the 2019 Community Club Board of Directors Veterans and First Responders Memorial Resolution that was passed, as well as the proposed Veterans and First Responders Land Lease Agreement. This morning, the Board of Directors will consider the proposed Land Lease Agreement for approval and execution. Between May 2nd's posting of the resolution and the proposed amendment and today, the Board has received 3 comments from community club members regarding the term of the agreement and the annual lease rate specified in the agreement. The 2019 resolution called for a 99-year lease, and as a result of negotiations between the Veterans and First Responders Board of Directors and the Community Club Board of Directors, agreement was reached for an initial term of 20 years with 4 10-year renewals, totaling a total of 60-year term for the agreement, and this was acceptable to both organizations. The 2019 resolution called for a nominal lease rate of $100 per year, and as a result of negotiations between the 2 boards, agreement was reached for an annual lease rate of $1 per year. The Community Club Board determined that the $1 a year annual lease rate is more appropriate due to the fact that the Community Club will be reimbursed for the groundskeeping and the maintenance expenses by the Veterans and First Responders organization. And the Board of Directors is in a position now to consider the land lease agreement. And so may I have a motion to move forward with approval of the Veterans and First Responders Memorial Land Lease Agreement authorizing the execution of the agreement.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, the motion to approve the land lease agreement for the Veterans and First Responders Memorial is approved, and we'll go ahead and execute that later today. We have 2 purchase requisitions before us today. The first one is for the welcome signs at the square and the St. George Drive signs. And Bob, are you going to introduce that?
Yes, as I mentioned, this PR is for the new welcome sign at the square, and then what I call a mini welcome sign at before St. George Drive, and in the amount of $54,000.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve that purchase requisition in the amount of $54,000 for the welcome signs?
Motion to approve the PR for the new welcome sign at the square and before St. George Drive in the amount of $54,000.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that motion is approved, so the PR for $54,000 is approved, Pat. The next item on the agenda is the Druid Hills Site Master Planning PR. And Greg, were you going to introduce that?
Yes. I'm going to take you a little bit through the process we used so that you have an idea of how we got to the recommendation. The master site plan consultant recommendation was really, if you go back to the last time we had a town hall, it's consistent with what we said the next steps would be. The next step, we said we would be getting a land use consultant, and that's what this recommendation is about. The RFPs went out, I'll get to the dates, but the members of the steering committee, who were the people that actually reviewed in detail the RFPs, discussed them, got our questions together, got the responses back from the bidders, were myself, Steve Ballou, who's the chairperson of the Food and Beverage Committee. He's not an employee, he's a resident, so he's a member that's acting in that capacity. Bruce Cox, the treasurer, Jeff Houston, who's the director of golf, Mike Johnson, who's the chairperson of the golf committee, who again is not an employee. He is a resident and chairs that committee. Rags Jones, who's the head pro at Druid. We thought it was a good idea, since he's going to have to live with a lot of the things that we're going to be doing, that he be a part of this so that we can get his input on what we're doing. And he's also serving as a staff support to both the golf committee and the food and beverage committee. Dave Miser, who's our chairperson for the MCPC, Bob Weber, the general manager, and we had Jamin on there, but of course, with his resignation, we'll have a conversation this afternoon at the steering committee meeting about how we're going to fill that position. We still want that expertise on. We need it from the staff, so we'll be talking about that this afternoon. The process that we went through, on March 9th, we sent an RFP out to all bidders. We gave them 2 opportunities to bid on 2 scopes of work. One would be the master site planning piece of the project, and the second would be the architectural engineering. And I'll a little bit later get into the differences between those 2. From that RFP, we received 5 RFP responses back. 4 of them, I should say 3 of them actually bid on both scopes of work. 1 bid only on the master site plan piece of work, and 1 bid only on the architectural engineering piece of the work. So that person or that group, Upland Design Group, we're delaying their response or any kind of decision on the RFP because that scope of work is not being looked at this point. The others were considered, the other 4, and I'll go through a little bit about how we got to conclusions on each one of them. The steering committee reviewed all the proposals, identified additional questions. That was at the end of April. And then we sent back out to all the bidders the questions that we had. There were 2 categories. One were general ones. A general question would have been something like, how soon could you start if we give you the work? A more specific question would be, explain to us your travel expenses. So both sets of those questions went out. We got the responses back by May 13th from the bidders. May 19th, the steering committee met to make a recommendation. And yesterday at the board workshop, we went through the same process here about how we got that recommendation. So 4 consulting firms were considered. The first one was AEI. They gave us a fixed bid plus expenses, but for some reason, whether they didn't understand the scope, although they included all the scope items we were looking at, or just their costs were what they were very much higher than any of the other bidders. So our decision there was to eliminate them from consideration. The second group that we looked at was a group called Chambers Group, which is really fundamentally an architectural engineering firm but does other things. They would only accept the land use consulting work if they were guaranteed the architectural engineering work. We did not want to hook the 2 together because we see them as separate decisions, separate scopes of work, so we did no longer consider them and eliminated them from consideration. The third group was the Feltus Hawkins Group. Their bid had limited scope to it. It only tied to a certain part of the scope of work that we had in the RFP. Plus, they're truly an architectural and engineering firm. They're not really a land use consulting or a master planning kind of consulting group. So as a result of that, our decision was to eliminate them from consideration. The other group that was considered was McMahon, and now I'm going to go into the reasons why we selected McMahon for recommendation for the work. This group is out of St. Louis. They are a recognized group for this kind of work and is recognized nationally in terms of being a leader in this type of work. This is what they do for a living. They do not do architectural engineering. They were one of the 2 firms, or one of the firms that only applied for the master site plan, and that's the only bid they have. So they're not going to be turning in anything for architectural engineering. It is strictly with the site planning. We've had a good experience with them in the past. They were the ones that did the master site plan for the Racket Center, which we're still using. The work on that was done, I don't know, several years before I was on the board, but it's been good work. We still use that plan. Matter of fact, the Racket Sports Committee, as they're looking at plans for the future, are still using that plan as a basis for what to recommend. So our experience there was good. McMahon is very knowledgeable about emerging trends, so we believe because of that, they'll challenge our teams and our committees to look at things that we may not otherwise look at and give us recommendations about things that we may think are good ideas, but they may see as not quite as good as what other people are doing. The other thing I would say about McMahon is they were one of two groups that actually came here on site, walked the property down, met with the team, and we did not request nor ask anybody to do that. It was their request to come here and see what they were going to be bidding on. We walked it down with them. They had good questions. They understand what we're trying to do. And most importantly, I think in that whole conversation is they understand the importance that this project has with the commitment to involve the community. So they understand that the community is going to be involved. It's not just going to be the steering committee, it's not just going to be the subcommittee, it's not just going to be the board, but the community is going to be involved in gathering information and also as part of the presentation. So this was a major consideration for us. I want to be clear about the scope of work that's in here because there's some confusion. Me not being an engineer, which I take with a lot of pride, was confused for a little bit, although Dave and Bruce did their best to try to turn me into that. It's not going to happen. But at any rate, I want to be clear about the scope of work. What a site plan is, it is not going to be renderings, of what a building's going to look like or a golf training facility might look like or any of those kinds of things that are under consideration. It is going to be a layout of that land on the Druid Hills property with boxes about where things are going to be. The architectural engineer, when we get to that phase, will be the people that take those requirements from the subcommittees, the steering committee, and the board and the community, and make those renderings. So that's a ways off. You're not going to see buildings. You're not going to see this is going to be this room and that room and the other room. You'll see what the requirements are, but it's not going to be all those engineering renderings that people might think they're going to see. That's later on. Okay, I want to be real clear about that. And we continue to work through the process, that the process that we're using is the subcommittees are doing the work, which are all residents with a couple staff members and one board liaison assigned. Those subcommittees are making recommendations to the steering committee. The steering committee will go over those recommendations with the subcommittees present, so they'll be the ones making the presentations, not Bruce or I. And that will then go, after the board has looked at it, to the community for their feedback before any final decisions are made. So that's the process we're going to continue to use. McMahon's bid was also competitive, and with that, are there any questions?
So McMahon's work won't start until after you start getting feedback.
I'm sorry?
Again,
McMahon's
Tom,
work.
please go to the microphone, otherwise people, it doesn't.
Yeah, you got the same problem I do, Tom. I got to move closer.
So just to be clear, so McMahon's work really won't start until you start getting all the feedback from the subcommittees, because they won't know where to put the boxes, right?
No, they will be a part of that process, okay? We want them involved in that because before we just, the major group the subcommittees will do are the requirements, but we're going to look for advice from them on some of that because they may have some other ideas that we ought to consider while we're looking at those requirements. Okay. So our intention is, if the RFP, or I'm sorry, if the PR is approved today, we're going to start into a negotiation with them, and we hope to have that in place by July 1st.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Same question I asked yesterday, a little bit different. The settlement with Anderson's property, is that going to delay this process? Is that going to affect the site plan?
We do not believe that that's going to be the case, and Nico, that's a good question. We believe we're far enough along that we feel comfortable with taking on this piece of work. Remember that the site planning piece of this work, if you looked at the RFP responses, McMahon would say it's going to be a 4 to 6 month project. We're not sure if that's going to be true because we want to make sure we go through all those wickets that I described of subcommittee, steering committee, board, and community before we make the final decisions on that. So it may take longer. It may take about that time. We don't know yet. We haven't put timelines to this. But the thing is that we continue to work on with this committee, and we keep telling the board, is we want to take the amount of time it takes to get this right. So, and that we follow the process. So we have not put a firm timeline on when this is going to take. But we do know that at a minimum, it's going to be 4 months That's a minimum, and I don't think that's going to be realistic. I think it's going to be much longer than that. So I think by then, we'll be able to get this other piece taken care of.
Is there any possibility that the Anderson's current land would house part of the building facilities, or is that going to stay, you feel that it'll stay as a driving range?
I think right now the thinking, and again, we haven't looked at all of that yet, so I'm just giving you initial thoughts, is that the area where the driving range is probably not be not to be a piece of the building for the clubhouse. But we don't know that for sure yet. That's the kind of thing we got to go through.
All right, thank you.
Okay? Any other questions? All right, with that, I'm going to make a recommendation that we approve the PR for the $38,000 for the site planning consultant.
Okay, is there a second for that motion?
I second that.
Okay, is there any discussion from the board? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The PR for the Druid Hill site plan in the amount of $38,000 is approved. At this time, we'll recognize Bruce Horn, who is going to present the FGRS update. And in case you're wondering, this is not Pat Grouet, this is Bruce Horn.
Long pants, no t-shirt. This is it. And no joke. Thank you. It's been a very busy month. I'm going to give you some numbers that, because May isn't done, we're going to use the April numbers. But for our Way to Go keeps expanding, and that's the ridership program. We had 237 rides in April, and we continue to grow that. And I'll get to some of the upgrades of our programs once I finish laying out what has happened with most of our big programs. Home safety assistance. We're installing renovations in homes, the approved renovations. We're getting more requests for that, more interest in it. And that goes back to Greg's great term of evolving. We are seeing the same thing at FGRS with programs and interests with the evolving changes, I guess, the demographics that are coming into this wonderful place we live in. And we're seeing those three segments, as you know, we describe them as the beginning, middle, and third stage of retirement here. And so we're seeing requests for safety assistance things, the ride programs, the Caring Connections programs is expanding. We're getting a lot more calls about how can resident services help. And we do that through referrals and providing information to where you can get support for our, we call them clients, but they are our source of our energy with our volunteers as well. But there's an interest and a need expressed for additional medical services for some people, not just our own residences, but people that are coming into to Fairfield and asking about what's available. We're getting more and more of those kinds of interests and questions. We're getting very active now with our Welcome Home Again. Last month in April, we had 88 new packages that went out, and those include all of the information that we provide for our other programs, the Vial of Life, where to get things done, just good information, plus the wonderful gift card that they get from Fairfield. So it's a very popular program. The rest of these programs are, again, evolving. We're finding a need that our community has asked for. And one of the one of the ones that's going to happen now that we're in the middle of working with is the police department and the community rollout of the new safety measures. And that includes the Vial of Life, the Yellow Dot program. We're working with the Alzheimer's Tennessee. We're working very closely with the police department. That's the center of this. But we're working also with the Fairfield Glade Baptist Church, the Fairfield Glade Community Church. Again, as I say, the Alzheimer's Tennessee. So we've got a coalition of people working on different programs, and there's a rollout for this particular program, June 9th, July 19th, and September 1st, and there will be an announcement in the papers and on the website, the FGRS website. One of the things that we're experiencing is, as I said, interest in expanding programs and services, or at least getting to know us more. So we're putting together, I use focus groups, but that's what they really are, groups of people that we're trying to put together to get information from them of what they see they need for what we see as 3 distinct groups of residents. And we're putting those groups together to get information, get more connected with our community so that we are more informed and we can inform them of what services outside of ourselves are available. So that's an active program, and that's part of our looking for our future facility study as well. What do we need for the future? What kind of space are we doing? You know, we're at the whim of the real estate market itself. We're in a rental property. So we have to look long-term as well. To that end, some of our fundraising and activities going. We are very pleased to be working with the Christ Lutheran Church. In case you haven't heard about the golf tournament that Christ Lutheran Church is putting on in September, it's in the recipient of that. It's a memorial golf tournament for Ken Schuning, who is one of the founding members of Fairfield Glade Resident Services. All of the proceeds from that tournament will be going directly to Fairfield Glade Resident Services, which is just a wonderful opportunity for us to get some funds to help our friends in the community. So come golf. You know.
Bruce, what date?
It is on September 18th. Yeah, September 18th at Dorchester. And we are, along with our other programs, some of the upgrades that we are doing, I think it's important to note, we have revamped and revitalized and expanded the FG Services website. It's more interactive, more information is on there for our programs, like Vial of Life, and the collaboration we're doing with the churches and the police department. You can now download and/or interactive entry of data for the in case of emergency or the Vial of Life program, which we are expanding to the other amenities in the club, in the community, because there was that need and a recognition that we can help a little more. That's our luggage tag expansion for this whole program. But we have expanded our reach out through our enhanced mail systems now so that we can interact much better with the community for questions that they have. So when we send out information, we know if they've received it. We know if they've opened it. If there's not a response, we can call them through our Calling Connections group as well. So we're enhancing our technology to communicate with the community. And we need more volunteers, and we've got such a wonderful pool. Speaking of volunteers, we did pick up 3 new volunteers with a great experience, and it's going to help us with our marketing and our ability to attract sponsors. We have people that are now stepping into enhancing the Vial of Life program for us, and we have some help in our events and marketing side of the house for what we're trying to do. And with that, no jokes. I'm done. Questions, please. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bruce. Okay, at this time, we'll open the floor for comments from the members. If you'd like to make some comments, please step up to the podium, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes in length.
Thank you. A few things. First of all, I haven't heard recently, and I apologize, I wasn't here yesterday, an update on the easement agreements from the developer, where we stand on it with that agreement, what we actually spent over at the Grove, and we were going to get some easement agreements in place. Anything new?
I have no update on the agreement with the developer for the driving range. Those negotiations are continuing.
And I understand that, but we had talked originally about the improvements we made that we contributed to, and that we didn't have anything formal in place, such as our ability to use those improvements moving forward, who was going to maintain them, so forth. So, combination of easement agreements and the use agreements. Okay. My next point is regarding the driving range property. And I did have a conversation with Amy. My intent was, I'm trying to understand if the developer is delinquent on the dues and so forth. And I guess out of my conversation, I learned something new to me, that we have a term. Apparently, it's called a facility. Facility means when it's given that classification, there's no dues paid on that property, and that developer's property has been classified as a facility. I couldn't find definitions in any of our documents to that end, nor when it was actually entered into becoming a facility. In other words, this board taking action on it, because I understand the board would have to take action if it's going to become non-dues paying. When it happened, where was the vote, where is it in minutes, all of which Amy didn't have anything in there for it. And again, I'm looking for, what do we have in place? Because this appears to be the second time in a year where we've had some kind of quote-unquote waiving of dues, and I'm trying to figure out, it goes back in time, people say, but yet I understand that we didn't own the property until fairly recently. So it's confusing to me, and I'm hoping the board will give us those answers to that question.
Tom, I can answer that question. If you look at the CNRs are focused on residential property and talks about, and we've had this discussion, a lot of talk about living units. And so all the commercial property in Fairfield Glade is not part of our CNRs. Village Green Mall doesn't pay dues. All the churches do not pay dues. Wyndham, the land that they're on, commercial property, never paid dues. So that's pretty standard, and that's basically the land that Tom owns, is all that commercial land there where Wyndham has its guest check-in, then the Grove, and then across the street as well. So that's been for years, and that goes back to the CNRs from 1997. The only thing that he will pay dues on are lots that he owns, okay, and that's it. And it's lots that he is not undeveloped land, but actually lots that he owns. And so that's all part of the CNRs and what have you.
I appreciate that clarification. I guess I'm just confused on the Druid Hills Driving Range Maintenance Facility. So
That
you're
in essence-
sharing
that-
that's
that in
that's
essence
commercial.
is that in essence is commercial property.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
So it's not residential property. And if there is no commercial property or non-residential property in this community that pays HOA dues.
Okay, and we have maps and stuff like that that show this commercial property, I assume?
It'll show it as common property as opposed to commercial property, or it'll show it as owned by somebody else, like Village Green Mall or what have you, yeah.
And I can get with you, and I will do that later on, as far as you can point me to the definitions and our CNRs, so that we understand that he doesn't have to pay dues, is what you're telling me.
That's correct, that's correct, yeah.
Last point is, in the minutes section of this board meeting, and we as members don't see the minutes ahead of time, first of all. So you approve them all, and we get a chance to see them like the month later. So I'm referring to the March board meeting minutes. And Pat, you got a tough job when you have to translate all of this stuff into a written format. In those particular minutes, when I looked at it, there was a section in there that I thought was, could have had more texture, and that was Mrs. Miller's comments regarding the non-disturbance agreement, as she spoke on behalf of the board, explaining why we have them and the reasons they are necessary and so forth. I thought they didn't go far enough to conveying what you had conveyed, because quite frankly, as a member, it's very insulting to me to take and hear you talk about the reason we have them in place is because as a member, I can't distinguish between what's real and what's being talked about. And again, you were sharing your comments based on, for the board, based on their opinions, because nobody in this board section disagreed with what you said. They allowed you to speak on their behalf, and nobody said anything different. I just feel it's important on the minutes, and I'd ask the board to go back and look at them to ensure that they properly reflect what Mrs. Miller actually said at that particular meeting, so that we have those on record. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any other comments?
I have a short comment. In the last month or two, this podium has been shifted, and it's very frustrating to see the back of somebody's head. I personally think that Bruce has a beautiful mustache and goatee, and it would be nice to see that when he speaks, we get to see him. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, do I have any, oh, go ahead.
Yes, please, directed at Greg. Appreciate your work on the planning of the Druid Hills. The planning committee, company that you did hire, we've agreed to contract with. Can you give us a couple of examples of other communities and similar work that they have done, and maybe provide their website?
I can go to the RFP, but if you've got it right at hand, you can go through it, and I'll get the RFP up. Yes, there are references in there.
Yeah, I don't have it right at hand, but again, they're nationally recognized. They're one of the best strategic planning and land planning, facilities planning groups in the nation for clubs. As Greg indicated, they did the Racket Center master plan for us. So we have firsthand experience with them, but they work all over the country, many clubs in Florida.
Greg, do you have their website that maybe you can give to him and he could go look at their website?
Yeah, certainly, we'll have that in there. I mean, they have a list, to be honest with you, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pages long of references from just about every state, and each page has probably 60 to 80 facilities on it, actual clubs that they've done work. I'd be more than happy to go over that with you, but.
The name of their website?
Well, it's McMahon Group, okay?
If you
And
just
go there.
Google McMahon Group,
Yeah.
you'll find
Yeah,
them.
you'll find it there. They go through all the places. If you'd like to come up afterwards and take a look at some of the places, we'd be more than happy to show them to you. But to run through maybe 300 different places where they've done work might take a little bit longer than what we want to spend on that particular question. But it's a good question. And we did look at that, by the way. Matter of fact, a couple of the clubs I was very familiar with because I used to belong to them.
The spelling of McMahon, to look it up, is MC, correct me if I'm wrong, Greg?
Yep.
MCMAHON.
That's correct.
Okay, do I have any further comments from the floor? Do I have any comments from the members? With that, I'll entertain a motion to
Oh,
adjourn.
just a moment.
go ahead.
I have a question. You just said members, so. I have a question regarding what possibly might be going on where the Beanpot property is. They've been bulldozing and, in that area, and I question possibly Mrs. Mayor or our councilman to possibly know the answer to that. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments from members of the board? With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Okay, is there a second? Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We stand adjourned.
You can come on over on this side. It'll be a lot easier for you to see.
I'll collect
This is kind of a summary.